Welcome to the GuthrieAmerica podcast. We sit down with amazing people who do life in our community because we believe every story should be told. I'm your host, Heady Coleman. Today I'm sitting down with the one and only Chris LeGrande. Before we jump in this conversation with Chris, I want to thank our sponsor, Kevin Kraft, and his team at State Farm. He and his team take great care of my family with our life insurance, our car insurance, our home insurance, just really great people. Also, would you please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Heady Coleman, where this podcast will be hosted at. But then also on your favorite podcast app, leave us a review. Chris, it is a delight to be able to have you. We're in my home. Thank you for being in my home. Yeah. Thank you for taking time to do this. I just want to jump right into this thing. Be mindful of your time and all that stuff. But before we do that, well, I'm not going to go to our questions right away, okay?
Okay.
And so I just want to say, whenever you're around town now, people call you Chris, Mr. LeGrande, whatever, because of you once being a coach and a school teacher. Is it weird when people just call you Chris now if you see a student that call you Chris?
It is kind of unusual because I'm used to being in more of a formal setting like a school in a position of authority, and someone calling me Coach LeGrande or Mr. LeGrande. But if they just call me Chris, it is kind of unusual. I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute, which hat am I wearing now? And so I have to kind of take off the administrator hat and then basically switch over to I'm just another person here in the community of Guthrie, and so I'm good with that. I'm okay with that. It is weird though, or unusual, because my mother taught me as a young man, and as a young boy, that anyone in a position of authority, you need to address them by their title, whether it's Mr. or Doctor or whatever they are, and just to show them that respect and admiration. But that's okay, because like I said, I've changed roles. I've retired. I'm just a person now here in the community, and so if they just want to call me Chris, that's fine, and I'll adapt to it. But I will tell you, by and large, everyone still says either Mr. LeGrande or Coach LeGrande.
Yeah. Well, it just happened here a little bit ago. Preston sees you and he calls you Coach, and I always forget because I didn't know you as Coach.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I wasn't around Guthrie whenever you were coaching. I don't know when that was.
Yeah, that would have been from 1991 to about 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you coach at middle school?
Yeah.
Okay. I was about to say, because 91 I was in high school, so I wouldn't have been in the junior high,
right?
Yeah.
Right,
and so I wouldn't have known that about you in that time. And then I graduated and all that stuff. So but I knew you, Mr. LeGrande, principal, is what I pretty much have interacted with you on. Now, because you've kind of worn those hats as coach and Mr. LeGrande, I'm just curious on how your family would describe you if they were sitting in that chair. What would they say about you?
Okay, that's a really good question. Because my wife and I often talk about this, and my children and I kind of talk about, me and who I am and what I represent. But I would say that by and large, I would say that he is going to be reliable, dependable. He's going to show up each and every day to work. He's going to roll up his sleeves. He's going to tackle those hard decisions, and he's going to give it his all, 110%. And my mother always taught me that if you're going to do something, you need to do it to the best of your ability, and don't do it halfway. And so sometimes when people ask me, what's something, a quote or something that maybe you don't like or agree with, and it's good enough, and a lot of times you'll hear people say, okay, that'll work. It's good enough. It's good enough. Well, to me, good enough never is. And so I've always wanted to do whatever I can to the best of my abilities, and I would hope that people would say, and I think my children would say, he's a really good dad.
Yeah.
My wife would say he's a good father, he's a good husband, and it's because whatever I choose to do or set out to do, I do it to the best of my abilities.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So out of that, like hearing these things about you, now your wife's been with you for I think we talked about you being married 31 years now, all that stuff, and she sees that about you. Do you think the same person when y'all met, like the story of when y'all met, would she still say it lines up today? Tell us about how y'all met each other.
Okay, so by the way, my wife is still teaching at Guthrie Junior High. She's been there now. I think she said this is year 26. She does keyboarding and computers at the junior high. But she and I joke about this quite a bit because she said, if I had grown up in Guthrie and knew you when you were in junior high and high school, we probably would have never dated or gotten married because you were probably a little bit on the reckless side. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. But anyway, so it's an interesting story. She is a what we call a PK, or preacher's kid. Her father is a Nazarene minister, and so her senior year in high school, they were living in Chelsea, Oklahoma, which is a small. It's about the size of Crescent, Oklahoma, but it's in northeastern Oklahoma by Claremore. And our church, the Nazarene Church south of Guthrie, is called Grace Church of the Nazarene on Sooner Road, actually extended a call to her dad to be our minister. We were looking for a pastor. And so this was in January, and he said, I would love to come now, but my daughter is a senior in high school, and I don't want to just up and move her in the middle of her senior year. And he said, but if you will wait until this summer in May or June, I'll be more than glad to come. And so fast forward to June, we'd just gotten out of high school, just graduated, and I show up at church that first Sunday that he's there, and she looks over to her sister. Her sister is 2.5 years younger. In fact, it's Shalene Winscott, who's our Logan County Election Board secretary. But she looks at her sister and says, I'm going to marry that guy someday. And true story, of course, unbeknownst to me, I had no idea. But anyway, she thought, here is a nice-looking guy, a Nazarene boy, goes to church. He appears to have his stuff together, so this may be the one. And needless to say, several weeks later, we ended up going on a date to Frontier City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she'll tell you, she actually asked. She didn't really ask. It wasn't a date, but she worked at Tinker Credit Union, and they had a company picnic at Frontier City.
Okay.
And so they got to bring a guest. And so she said, hey, do you want to go with me to Frontier City for this picnic? We'll get to eat, hang out. And it was just so crazy because I thought, after that first time together, we had a lot of fun. And so I asked her out to pizza the next week, and we fell in love, and here we are 31 years later, and
wow,
it's awesome.
That is so awesome. Congrats. And y'all have how many children?
We have 3 girls. I'm a girl dad.
Oh, my goodness. So you the only guy in the house.
I am.
What is something that somebody probably doesn't think about when you live with all ladies?
You learn in a hurry to bite your tongue, to close your mouth. Yes, ma'am, we'll get that taken care of. Because happy wife, happy life,
yes,
okay?
Yes.
With 4 women in the house, if you're not making them happy, you're going to be unhappy. So don't try to beat them, join them.
Yeah, just join in. That's right. I have 2 boys, and then the youngest is a girl. And so, of course, my wife is in the house. She's a female. But I remember when my daughter was 6, and I tried to wake her up for school, and she just starts crying. Like, I think she was up a little bit, but she just starts crying. I'm like, what is going on? And she's like, Dad, you just don't understand. Like, you're a guy. You don't know what's going on. I'm like, ever since then, I just kind of kept my place and referred to Mom on most things.
That's right. That's right. And so as far as, brushing the hair and putting in braids and
all that,
picking out clothes and just, empathizing with those hormones and the emotionality of females.
Yeah.
I've just kind of let her run that. But yet at the same time, I've tried to be that loving, nurturing, supporting father to make them feel like, that they are loved and they're cared for, and that, if they have tough times or hard times, they're going to feel confident and feel very comfortable coming and visiting with me about that. Yeah.
That's good. Now we know that you've been around Guthrie for a long time, and so Tell me some of the things that you've seen change in GuthrieAmerica over the years that you
Okay.
feel like stand out to you.
Yeah, so I was born in Guthrie. In fact, I was born at the hospital, Alverno Heights, on the west side of town, which is now a retirement center. We call it the old hospital.
Yeah,
But I was born there, raised there, went to school here, graduated here, and came back to be a part of the community. I enjoyed it so much. But probably the biggest thing that I've noticed is just the growth in our community and with businesses. I talk about when I was young, we had one Sonic. We didn't have all those restaurants on the east side of town now, the Loves and the Golden Chick and all that, Brahms and all those businesses. But we had one Sonic on Division Street, which is still there.
now, when you say one Sonic, so people really understand, like, there was no McDonald's either.
No,
It was just the Sonic.
That's right.
No Walmart, no.
Now, there
any of
was
that.
a Brahms, it used to be a Mexican restaurant right there in front of the health
yes,
department.
okay.
And that was a Brahms. There was Pizza Hut, which is Kevin Kraft's building. That was a Pizza Hut. But that was basically the extent of it.
Yeah.
I mean, no Boomerang like we have now. We had a Hilltop Cafe, which is real cool. It was actually right across the street from the drive-in, and that because it was on top of a hill, and they called it the Hilltop. And Coach Chappell and I loved to go on there and they had a salad that was just incredible, chef salad.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we would drag Maine, is what we'd call it. We'd start at Sonic. And drive up to Oklahoma Street, and then go down past the junior high, and then right there at the temple, turn around, and then go back down.
Would you
Oklahoma.
turn around in the loop, or would you go all the way around the temple?
Typically, we wouldn't even go to the loop. We would just make an illegal turn right there in the middle of Capitol in Oklahoma, and then just drive back down. And then it was so cool, though, because people would get out of their cars there just to the south, and now they've kind of put up an iron kind of a fence there. But a lot of people would just park there right next to that little street, just south of Sonic there, and just get out and we'd hang out. And that was kind of our thing. And of course, we don't have that anymore. But just to see all of the growth and the opportunity, and another thing I think is so cool is all these homes on the east side of town and now kind of on North Division, people have gone in there and they've bought these homes and they were kind of old and dilapidated and they've basically remodeled them and made them into really nice, cute little what I call bed and breakfast style homes, and renting those, or people are buying them, or if they're being flipped. And it's so cool because it's just like revitalizing and re-energizing and just really adding a sense of awe and wonder to our community that was just kind of old and historic, and now it's just growing and it's vibrant and it's awesome to see.
Yeah. No, I like too some of the homes. Like some of them, they've built some modern looking homes as well, amongst the historical the homes that have been around for a while. And so that's kind of cool to see because the modern, they kind of made them to where they would fit within the historic homes. And so I really like that about what's going on in Guthrie, and that's so true. And thinking about you cruising in high school on the main drag or whatever, hanging out in Sonic. I will say before I go into this next question, I remember when I moved back to Guthrie in 2007, and I was driving one night. I ended up out late or something like that, and I drove through, and there was no kids. It was like quiet, and I was like, "Where are all the kids?" And nobody's hanging out in the parking lots and cruising the streets or anything like that. And so it was kind of weird that those things were not happening anymore. Then I was like, "Well, what are the kids doing? Like, where are they at? Where are they hanging out at?" Like, you couldn't all be in somebody's house. Because, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of kids hanging out on Division and throughout the town. But you could all see everybody hanging out on the strip. People would have their different spots. And I was like, where are kids hanging out at?
What are they doing now?
What are they doing? Yeah. You know, and then I learned social media and games have become the hangout.
And that's what I was going to say is I bet they're at home playing games.
Yeah, because when my son got married, I tell people, like, all of his groomsmen except one, I think, were from somewhere around the United States. And they all been hanging out on games for years to such a degree that he felt like these are the people that should be his groomsmen.
Yeah.
So it's real relationships happening there. But knowing that you were doing that many years ago and you graduated from high school, you transitioned, did you think one day you would be the principal at the high school that you graduated from?
No way. I mean, that's, reflecting back on what I've done in my career, I never really envisioned being an administrator or principal at a school. Now, when I graduated in 1986, I enrolled at Oklahoma State, and I started out in pre-med physical therapy. And so I'd taken a lot of chemistry classes, science classes, biology types classes, zoology, physiology. And about my junior year, I got to thinking, these classes are getting pretty tough, and I'm going to have to make an application to get in, medical school. And I've always loved education, and school was fun. I mean, I did well in school. And so I enjoyed the extracurricular activities, just being around people, the socialization. And so I tell people all the time, and a lot of people don't believe me, but it's a true story, true fact, that in my immediate family, which is my 4 siblings, I have 3 brothers and a sister, and then my mom and dad, I'm the only one with a college degree. And so I liked education. I valued it. I really realized the significance or the importance. So I thought, you know what? I've had all these science classes. I really love education. I'd like to go into education. And so I went ahead and changed my major to education, took some education classes because I had all the science classes pretty much, and ended up student teaching at Putman City High School. And I was student teaching physics and chemistry, believe it or not. I mean, and I had kids in that class, in those classes, that were like going to Harvard and Yale. I mean, these Ivy League schools. And you talk about, for this young man that was just getting into education, I was in essence a day ahead of the kids. I mean, these kids were very intelligent, and I would go home and do all my homework, get ready, be prepared. And the next day I found out in a hurry that if we would just collaborate and let those kids teach each other, they were really learning a lot. So I would just say, hey, here's the problem. Go put it up on the board, work it out, and explain it to your classmates. And you know what? Those kids learned a lot. I learned a lot, and it was a great experience.
Yeah. No, it's really hearing you say that about the students and giving them the opportunity to teach. It's kind of, we were talking about this earlier. It's kind of like homeschool. Like, kids learning how to teach themselves is incredible. Like, and so many of these kids are bright, but it's always good to have that person there to help guide that as they're doing that. But yeah, so you become the principal one day. What was that like? Because now you're the principal of the school that you graduated from. What kind of feeling did that create? Was that the style? Like, what was that like? I'm just trying to.
Yeah. So, and to kind of just piggyback on what I said a little bit earlier. So I ended up getting a job at Guthrie Junior High, and I was a science teacher and then a coach. I did football, basketball, and baseball at the junior high. And then about 10 years in, the principal at the time, Tim Rawls, said, have you ever thought about going to administration? And I thought, no, I love what I do. I love being around kids each and every day. And he goes, I think you'd be a really good principal. So it was about that time that Southern Nazarene University was starting it was called the MAEL, which is the Master of Arts in Educational Leadership program. And it was a Wednesday night class for 18 months. And it was designed for coaches because as coaches, we didn't have any kind of games on Wednesday nights. It's church night. And so basically for the next 18 months, I attended class there every Wednesday night from 6 o'clock to 10. And believe me, those professors weren't into, we're going to get out at 8:30 or 9. We're going until 10 o'clock, so it was 4 hours every Wednesday night, and got my administrative degree, and then ended up in Edmond for 3 years, but still lived in Guthrie. So I've always lived in Guthrie. And then a job at the high school came open for an assistant principal. Like, I want to get back to Guthrie. My wife was there. My kids are there. It's hard when you're in another town and they're getting awards at school, or they're having assemblies or having a field trip, and you just can't leave and then come back and then go back to work. So I came back to Guthrie, and then I was an assistant at the high school under Chad Wilson, and then he left, and then I became the principal, and it was just so cool because, it's like, here I am, I get to lead the school that I was a student of.
Yeah.
And just to see it grow and change and add on to and just all of the changes have taken place up there under Dr. Simpson's leadership. It's just been amazing. But at the same time, I still had a couple of the teachers, Coach Michoud, who's still there, and rest her soul, Joyce Allen, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. She was a teacher, and she was my teacher. So I actually had some of those people that were teachers there, and that was probably the coolest thing, was that I came back and I was actually, Miss Allen's boss when she was my teacher.
Yeah.
So
what was that like, navigating that as a leader now? Leading people who once taught you.
Yeah.
Like, did you have to learn something in that, or did it just kind of happen for you, or was there somebody who mentored you through that?
Yeah, so a lot of it was just that, you know what, you're the leader of this building, and now your role or your hat is different, and so now it's a matter of, instead of taking instruction from someone, I'm actually giving instruction or giving encouragement or guidance. And especially for teachers that have been doing it a long time, like she had, and some of the other teachers in the building, and trying to get them on board with new technology, that's where I came in, and I thought, you know what, I can utilize some of my skill set that I've been able to learn in this profession and actually help some of these older and veteran teachers, embrace this idea of technology and some of these new teaching strategies to get kids engaged, and so that they will want to learn in your class.
Yeah, and also for you, you had classroom experience, so it wasn't as though you were coming in just as the principal, not having any classroom experience or anything like that. And so I'm sure that kind of helped give you a little bit of what's the word that I'm looking for? Buy-in from veteran teachers.
I agree, because I was a teacher for 15 years, and our state laws in Oklahoma require that you're a teacher for 3 years before you become an administrator. And so some teachers just teach that minimum and then go right into administration. But I had taught in the classroom, in the science classroom, 5 hours a day for 15 years. And so I think that heralded a little bit of respect and admiration. And so I knew what it was like to be in a classroom, and I learned quickly that if you are going to be a good administrator and a good leader, you never want to forget what it was like to be a teacher. And as a teacher, you never want to forget what it's like to be a student.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. So, now, out of something I do know about you, we was having a conversation the other day, just kind of changing gears here a little bit, is that you're a runner.
Yeah.
You were talking about going for a run just the other day. How did you get into running?
Okay. So I was pretty athletic in high school. I played football and basketball, and probably had the opportunity to play college baseball on as smaller school. No, I wasn't Division I talent, but probably NAIA Division II, III. And so I didn't, because I just wanted to really focus on academics. So when I came back, I will tell you, I mean, you look at me now and you think that guy was out of shape. But once I got to college, I probably put on a few pounds. I worked in a kitchen, and so started kind of eating a little bit more, put on a little extra weight. And then did some teaching, and then coaching, and you're always gone. And, as a former athlete, you always stop at McDonald's after games, all this fast food stuff. So started gaining a little bit of weight, getting out of shape. And then this is where it really got me, okay? So I was an assistant principal at Cimarron Middle School in Edmond for 3 years. And each year, if you're going to be able to drive a bus, you have to take a physical. And I wanted to keep my CDL as an administrator to be able to take kids on field trips. And if, we needed someone to fill in as a bus driver, I was available. So I go to the doctor to get my annual physical so I could get my CDL. And they come back and they said, "Sir, your blood pressure is really high." And I'm like, "Dude, what?" And I mean, I'm thinking high blood pressure. I'm 25 years old. I shouldn't have high blood pressure. So at that point, I thought, you know what? I need to kind of change some things.
Yeah.
And so started kind of watching what I was eating a little bit. But then this is where it gets interesting. So when I came back to Guthrie's assistant principal, we're in the summertime and we're working. And Chad Wilson and Brett Stone, Chad was the principal, Brett Stone's assistant. He goes, "You know what?" Chad goes, "Every day at lunch, we go up and run a mile at the track." I'm like, "A mile at the track? Okay. You want to run with us?" Okay. So I go up to the track and we run a mile, and they're kind of sweating real hard and breathing real hard. And I'm like, that wasn't much.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't much at all.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm like, well, I want to do 2 miles. And then 2 miles became 3 miles. And then kind of fast forward, I've run 3 half marathons now. And I was really training to do a full marathon, but I started having some knee and back problems.
Yeah.
And so now I try to keep my runs between 5 and 6 miles, and I'll still try to do half marathons every once in a while.
Wow. So you've been running now pretty consistently for how many years?
For about 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I try to run 3 to 4 times a week, 4 to 5 miles each
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool. Now running is pretty, like not everybody's jumping out there running 3 or 4 miles. So out of that, another thing that I know that you do that's pretty work intensive is roofing. Like, how did you get into roofing? Like, people probably don't know how many roofs that you've actually done over however many years, right?
Yeah, I lost count. I've probably roofed close to 100 homes over the last 32 years.
Yeah.
I got into roofing. Another interesting story. As I told you, my father-in-law is a minister. Well, he's always been a pastor at small churches, so he's been bivocational. Okay. Heady, you know what I mean by bivocational. And so he was bivocational, and he started roofing when he was in college at Southern Nazarene, and had roofed on the side, to make extra money for the family. And that first summer after Cheryl and I started dating, I was over at the house, and he goes, "Chris, I got a roof to do in Edmond. You want to help me tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Well, it's summertime. I'm out of school. I'm looking for something to do." And I thought, "Oh, okay, I guess." And so we load up, get in the truck, and go to Edmond. I learned how to do wood roofs. I mean, shake roofs, and that because at that time that's all people put on their homes were those shake roofs. Well, then I got into composition roofs, and he finally got to the point where he got older and he couldn't do it anymore, so he gave me all his tools. And so as a teacher, it was an awesome job because, in the summertime, here I've got 2.5 months, to find something to do. And so I supplemented my income, and I'll just be honest with you, it's basically became the savings fund for my daughters for their college. Yeah. And so was able to kind of take that money, save it, and put it into a savings account for college, and it really helped supplement my income, and I tell you, I loved it. It kept me in decent shape. I mean, it is pretty labor intensive, and so just that hard work. There's something about working hard and feeling good, and looking up there afterwards and saying, job well done.
Yeah, that's good. It kind of goes back to the thing that your mama taught you too, like. Yes. You know what I'm saying? And so out of that, I feel like that's what's kind of been something that's been pushing you to even taking your health seriously, like put in that hard work to do the thing right. And you've been doing that. And so what's something about roofing like most people may not know? Like when putting on a roof, what's something that the normal everyday person like myself wouldn't know?
You know what? That's a great question, and I've never been asked that by just the average person, but it is extremely difficult ripping off old shingles that are up there, especially when you get multiple layers of shingles, like 2 or 3 layers, because there's so many nails and all. Because what you have to realize is there are 8 shingles in every, or I'm sorry, 8 nails in every shingle on a roof. Okay.
In every shingle?
Yes, there are 8.
Goodness.
Because there's 4, 1 on the end, and then 2 in the middle. And then on the next shingle that goes on top of the previous shingle, you get 4 more nails across the very top of that shingle, which is in the middle of the shingle that goes on top of it. So there are 8 nails in every shingle. And so when you think of 2 and 3 layers of shingles up there, that is a lot of intensive work. So,
Yeah.
and then the second part is that it is actually a skill and it's a craft, because you don't want leaks. You don't have to come back. And so when you have to do around chimneys or skylights or valleys where there's a lot of water, you have to be very careful and meticulous on how you place that flashing, that metal flashing, and how you interlace those shingles in that metal flashing so that you don't get leaks. And so it's, a lot of people think that it's just simple. I'm just going to go there and put on shingles, but it's actually a skill and a craft, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I've never looked at it and thought that looks easy to me. Now, let me ask you this. So I don't know how long nail guns have been around, but I'm assuming now that's what you use, nail guns.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time where you did not have to use a nail gun to put on a roof?
One time when my father-in-law was bragging about when he first started, all he did was hand nailing. Well, the gentleman or the roofing company that we worked for at that time said, you know what, I've got a roof, and the homeowners are insisting that they want it hand nailed because they think it's better. So we ended up doing a hand nail job because they had requested it. And I'm like, you know what, I'm not hand nailing anymore. I don't do hand nail jobs. I use the pneumatic gun, which is hooked up to a compressor, and it's so much easier and faster.
How would you imagine that being better?
Well, it's because they wear these, and they have it's a little bitty metal box they put around their neck. It's really interesting. It's called a stripper because you strip the nails out of it, basically. And you put all the nails in there, and they line up in a little straight line. And what you do is you just pull them out the end 4 at a time and just boom, boom, boom. And I guess it's the way that you hold them in your hands. And, you know, I didn't do it long enough, nor did I care to learn how to do that.
To prove if it was...
Yeah. And so I thought, I am not messing with that, and I'm not going to, you know, beat up my fingers trying to learn how to hold them between my fingers.
Goodness.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
there's no way in the world.
No.
And I think that's what when I look at a roof, I'm thinking, man, surely nobody has ever had to hand nail a roof, but they have.
Yeah, yeah. And,
The time frame that it would take to...
but, you know, there are people that if they do it all the time, they're really good at it, and they're efficient and fast.
Yeah.
But for the average person that just does it every once in a while, yeah, it's just it's not worth it.
Pull out the gun.
Yeah.
Let's pull out the nail gun and make this thing work.
That's right.
You know, one of the things going back to schools, because that's just a big part of a community, is Guthrie has a homecoming parade, which I didn't know that a lot of places don't have homecoming parades.
Right.
Guthrie makes a really big deal out of homecoming. And parades in general in Guthrie are a big deal.
Yeah.
89 parade, all these different parades. Do you have a parade spot? I'm always wondering if you have a parade spot, because I think I know where your parade spot is because I've been in parades. Tell me where your parade spot is. Is it different when you're with your family?
No, in fact, we go to the same place every year. It doesn't matter when or what time of the year or what parade it is. It's our spot.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's right there. It's right there. It's just 2 blocks down. Well, actually, it's about a block down from the junior high, just directly west of Guthrie Junior High.
Yeah.
And it's right there. I'm trying to remember. I have to remember. It's so funny because I've lived in Guthrie all these years, and
You don't know the side streets?
I don't know the streets because I just know landmarks. You know what I mean? But it's actually right there. Like I said, directly 2 blocks west of the junior high on the south side of the street.
Yeah.
And we all sit there together every year, and we get there early and park just directly south, a couple blocks down, right along the street, and then just walk up to our spot.
I just think it's so funny now that I've been doing these podcasts, these episodes, and interviewing people, sitting down with people. Everybody has a parade. If they're from Guthrie, everybody I've talked to just about had a spot for their parade. Like, this is our spot. This is where we're going to, and it's really cool. And I think that's part of who we are. Makes up who we are as a community.
I think it's like at church where everyone has a pew.
Yes. It
And
is
don't sit in my
similar to
pew.
that.
Don't sit in my spot at the parade.
Yes, do not be in my spot. You know that's my spot. Yeah, you cannot sit there. Yeah, I come in church some days and I know that when new people are sit down and they're in so and so, like that's where so and so and them sit.
Yeah.
And I think God does that every once in a while with certain people just so we can have the conversation like, now you know this is a church. Like you just don't
That's right.
like you're here to serve people. You're here to love folks.
That's right. You can get up and move and make them welcome wherever they sit.
Yes, you will be all right. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yep. So, going to school here, this wasn't on the thing, but I'm just curious. Like, is there some teachers that stand out to you from your time in Guthrie that you reflect on every now and then that made an impact on your career?
Yeah. You know, it's often said that next to either a parent or a grandparent, the most influential people or person in your life is a teacher or teachers. And I truly believe that. Of course, I'm biased. I'm an educator, been doing it for 32 years. But I truly believe that coaches and teachers have a profound impact on kids' life. And so one of the reasons, and back in 2001, I was actually Guthrie Teacher of the Year and one of the finalists for Oklahoma Teacher of the Year. And I had to do a portfolio, and part of that portfolio was, who was instrumental in you becoming a teacher. And so several times, and she knows this, Peggy Momsen, Peggy Fleck at the time, she was my 8th grade science teacher, and I loved her. And what I really admired about her is that she gave. And this was before differentiation was a big thing, Used to be, teachers would just throw it out there, and it was like a chicken coop. You either get it or you don't. And you fight for it, and if you want it, you get it, and if you don't, you don't. Well, back before differentiation and helping each and every individual student was a thing, she gave, whenever we had a test, she had 3 different levels of tests. She had Form A, Form B, and Form C, because she wanted her kids to be successful. And so A was difficult, B was not quite as difficult, and C was a little bit more on level. And looking back now and knowing what I know now, I thought, how ingenious was that? Because she didn't want to give a really difficult test to a kid that struggled and basically lose all their hope and aspirations and basically turn them off to science. And so she would give them something that she knew that they were able to be successful on. And so I got the A one, which was really, really hard. And this is so funny. We would get with people in the other classes that had already taken the test and say, hey, what's on that test? And so they'd give us the answers, and she caught wind of it. And so when she did, she didn't tell us. So next time we had a test, I get a different test from everybody, and it didn't have any of the same questions that any of those other tests had. It was just special for me, man. And I'm like scratching my head, and I'm like, this woman knows. She knows what she's doing. So, but anyway, I loved her. She was so supportive. And then Carolyn Hendricks, Richard Hendricks, that's in charge of the sports museum. I had his wife for my sophomore and senior year of high school in English, and she was really instrumental and pushing me and wanting to get the best out of me. And I still attribute the fact that I'm a really good writer. I mean, that a lot of people don't know that about me. I don't choose to write, but when I write, I'm a really good writer. And she was instrumental on teaching me how to the components of writing and making good subject-verb agreement and sentence structure and things like that. And then I always like to tell people Willie Young, again, another just an anchor in our community for many, many years. He was a junior high. In fact, he was my junior high history teacher and basketball coach, and then he was high school baseball coach and athletic director at the junior high for a long time. Pillar of the community, just so encouraging and positive, and just a mentor to me when I was getting into the teaching and coaching profession. And then Gerald Reed, and he passed away a few years ago. He was our head high school baseball coach, and he had a big influence on me as well. So those individuals specifically.
Yeah, yeah. No, I always, I love to advocate for teachers, encourage teachers because I just understand the role that they play. Sometimes it's even beyond education. Just being able to support kids who may not be getting the support and love that they need at home.
Yeah.
Education is great, but I think it's those kind of things that really make teachers that much more special to me when I see them doing that and helping kids really just navigate life in a lot of ways. And another thing that's interesting to me is kind of like you point out. You talk about an eighth grade teacher. You went to one teacher who was in eighth grade that you spent a year with, right? That you have held something on from that relationship that's impacted you now many years later to where you're still talking about her in such a way that's enduring. And sometimes you don't even remember all your teachers, but you just have those ones that just stood out to you and you don't know what it was.
Right.
But yeah, and so that's good. Now, a lot of us don't know what differentiate means.
Okay. Hey, that's a great question. So basically, all your kids, when they come to you, they're all on different levels. I mean,
Gotcha.
it's almost like whenever there's a race, we all start the race, but we all don't finish the race at the same time, And so basically, kids come to you at all different skill levels and skill sets and knowledge bases. And so what you try to do is meet them where they are and take them and progress them to greater heights. And so kids, I mean, you may have, for example, some kids that know already how to add 2 plus 2 or how to take X and subtract it from Y, and some kids don't.
Gotcha.
And so what you have to do is you have to help them and meet them where they are, teach them those skills that they may be lacking or deficient in, and take them up. Likewise, if you already know the materials and you want to present them information to help them learn at an accelerated or an advanced pace. So that's kind of what I mean by that.
Yeah.
And so you're not giving the same lesson to everybody in class. I mean, you may be lecturing the same, but how you're teaching them and how you're and putting them into groups based on their ability, it helps them to learn at their particular pace so that they can grasp that information and you can close those gaps and get them to where they need to be.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Can you share some ways that you see best to give back to your community?
Yeah. I think probably the most important thing is do something that you don't expect to be paid for in return. So often today, unfortunately, people's like, well, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of it? How much you going to pay me?
Yeah.
And so I'm big into, what? There's just some things that you do out of the goodness and selflessness of your heart, and you don't expect anything in return for it. And so I think you can do that by being in civic groups and organizations around town. Like, when I was principal, I made it a point to attend Rotary every Monday, and we took and part of that was Rotary Student of the Week, but whether it's Kiwanis Club, Lions Club, just getting involved and doing things and not expecting anything in return other than the fact that you're helping others and paying it forward. I think that's so important and crucial. I think a part of giving back to the community is like you talked about parades. I think just attending events, like going to Red Brick Nights and hanging out and saying hi to people.
Yeah.
You and I have seen each other there before. Going to the parades, the activities, the events, whether that be, and that's what's so cool about Guthrie is just the chamber's done a good job of getting in these events and just like the Victorian Walk or Christmas, and hanging out and being a part of that and just supporting that.
Yeah.
And then, keeping your business here in town.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I get gas, even though I work in Oklahoma City now, I always get gas right, at the quick stop right there by my house. So I think that's part of it. But I also think being in education like I have been for so many years, I think ultimately that is giving back. And because what you're doing is you're making an impression and you're influencing others, and in this case, kids that are going to become adults, that are going to be parents someday and grandparents, and being able to know that you had a part of that and that their experience was so enjoyable that they want to come back to Guthrie and raise their family and their kids here as well.
Yeah. No, so good. That's so good. Thank you for sharing that. And you kind of already hit on this. My next question was just, what does it mean, Choose Guthrie mean to you?
Yeah. Well, to me, Choose Guthrie is come here, take up roots here, get your kids involved in the community, in the schools, and raise your family here, because I think it's a great place to live.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I tell people I've lived here my entire life. In essence, even when I worked in Edmond, I still lived in Guthrie. We never moved, and so I've been here, for almost 57 years now, and I love it. I think it's a great place to live. I think it's a great place to raise your family. It's still small and quaint, but it's not real big, but it's close enough to Oklahoma City and Edmond now. I mean, we're growing so much, but still has all the amenities close to home, and I just think support it, do your shopping here when you can, and support the people that are working hard day in and day out to make a difference.
Yeah, for sure. That's so good. Yeah, talking about that getting gas, I was almost on E the other day, and it was like 32 miles or whatever. I was like, that's just enough to get gas in Guthrie. So I made it to Love's right off the highway to get gas within our city limits, And so, but it's those kind of things, and you can't always be doing things here, but making it a priority is the key, is what we want to see as far as that Choose Guthrie goes. And so, thank you so much for your time. Absolutely. I know that we went a little over. Most people won't know, but this is take 2 because I kind of started out, battery died, things kind of like that happens. But, man, I appreciate you. Thank you for the work that you've done in our community and how you've invested in it, and your wife, and just having a great family to represent our community and doing well. And thank you for the work you continue to do in education. I believe education is a big part of the foundation of our communities in world, and so thank you for the work you do and been invested for so many years. You got any last parting words?
No, I just, thank you so much, Heady, for having me, man. I admire you, the work that you've done in promoting our city and Choose Guthrie. I think that's awesome. And, just your positivity, and I know even as principal, so many times you bring things for us, or words of encouragement, or text messages, or things like that. I think that's so cool, and I think it's important that we don't forget people that are working in those trenches each and every day to make a difference, and making sure they get that praise and adoration that they deserve. So thank you for what you do as well. I appreciate it.
I appreciate that. And thank you all for hitting that play button for another episode of the GuthrieAmerica podcast. We are on a mission to have every story told of those doing life in our favorite town and those from here. Will yours be next? And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, choose Guthrie. Go in.
Awesome.